Pay attention to the footage from the security camera mounted on the light pole at the end of Row B at Iron Gate Storage, a storage facility located on the eastern edge of Henderson, Nevada. At that time, it was 9:12 a.m. on May 17, 2025, a mild, sunny Saturday morning with a clear sky and almost no wind. A white pickup truck bearing the storage company's logo turns into the driveway between two rows of metal storage units. The truck moves slowly, its tires rolling over a thin layer of dust on the concrete before coming to a stop toward the end of the row. The driver's door opens. A man steps out. He is in his mid-40s, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark blue work shirt and khaki pants. His name is Carter Whitmore. He is the manager of Iron Gate Storage and has worked at the facility for nearly 6 years. Carter looks down at the paper on the clipboard in his hand, then turns back toward the truck door. A second person steps out from the passenger seat, younger, in his late 20s, wearing a black t-shirt and faded jeans. That is Luis Ortega, the facility's maintenance worker. The two stand beside the truck for a few seconds, observing the row of metal doors in front of them. Carter points toward the end of the corridor. They begin walking. Their destination is Unit B17, a storage unit located near the end of the row. According to company records, this unit has not had rent paid for 8 months. The office had sent multiple emails, notices, and made numerous reminder calls, but the tenant never responded. Per company policy, when a unit has been abandoned for too long and the tenant cannot be contacted, the manager has the right to cut the lock to inventory the contents before placing them on the auction list. Carter carries a handheld bolt cutter, a set of spare keys, and paperwork forms. Luis carries the property inventory sheet and a phone to record the lock-cutting process in accordance with regulations. The two stop in front of the metal door of Unit B17. The gray-green paint is covered with a thin layer of dust. The padlock hanging on the crossbar shows signs of long neglect, the metal dull and slightly rusted. Carter bends down and places the cutter blades around the lock body. After a few seconds, the lock snaps open and falls to the concrete floor. Carter lifts the latch bar and grips the handle of the roll-up door. The door begins to rise. When it opens about 20 to 30 centimeters, Carter stops. He tilts his head, takes a light sniff, then frowns. Luis asks what's wrong. Carter says he smells something very strange. Luis steps closer and immediately notices it too. It is not just the usual musty odor found in long-closed storage units. The smell has something heavy and metallic, like damp metal mixed with something close to dried blood. The two crouch down and peer through the dark gap under the door. The morning light does not reach far enough into the metal room behind the door. Carter pulls out his phone, turns on the flashlight, and shines it inside. The thin beam cuts through the darkness. The first things visible in the light are a metal chair placed in the middle of the room, a length of chain attached to the wall behind it, 2 empty plastic water bottles, and a roll of gray industrial duct tape lying on the floor. Luis stays silent for a few seconds. Those items do not look like typical things people store in a storage unit. Carter pulls the door up a little more. More light enters. Luis bends down and looks at the concrete floor. He sees dark brown stains spread unevenly across the surface, dried and darkened. Luis says quietly that they look like old blood stains. He suggests they stop and call the office before continuing to open the door. But Carter, thinking it might just be discarded items, pulls the door up further. The metal door creaks as it opens wider. At that moment, Luis says he just saw something move behind the chair. Carter immediately directs the flashlight deeper into the room. The beam reaches a dark corner behind the metal chair, and there, on the cold concrete floor, they see a man lying on his side. At first, they think it is just a motionless body, but as Carter shines the light more carefully, they realize the man's wrists are bound in front of him, and a chain is locked around his ankles, attached to an iron hook embedded in the wall. His body is thin and filthy, his shirt wrinkled and torn at the shoulder. Carter stands frozen for a few seconds. Luis steps back. Carter calls loudly into the darkness. "Hey, can you hear me?" For the first few seconds, there is no response. Then the man on the floor moves slightly, just a small twitch at the shoulder. Carter shines the light closer. The man opens his eyes a little. His lips are dry and cracked. His voice is barely audible. He whispers a very short sentence. "Please, don't close the door." Luis steps back out into the corridor. Carter remains in front of the door, his hand holding the flashlight, trembling slightly. Both realize the same thing at the same moment. Inside this storage unit is a man being held captive. Luis takes out his phone and dials 911. The clock shows 9:16 a.m. He tells the dispatcher they are at Iron Gate Storage and have just opened an abandoned storage unit. Inside there is a man who was bound. He says the man is still alive, but looks very weak. The dispatcher instructs them not to enter and to wait for police. Carter and Luis stand outside the door. Carter holds the roll-up door half open to let air and light inside. The man inside barely moves. Occasionally, Carter sees his chest rise and fall very slowly. Luis says he can hear faint breathing from inside the room. The two stand there, saying nothing more for several unusually long minutes. Around 9:22 a.m., two Henderson Police Department patrol cars turn into the parking area in front of the storage row. Two officers step out, their body cameras starting to record. Carter points toward Unit B17 and says they are the ones who called 911. The officers approach the open metal door. One crouches down and looks inside. Henderson Police Department officers quickly remove the man found in Unit B17 from the metal room and transfer him to a stretcher. As paramedics begin a quick assessment of his condition right outside the storage row, they determine he is severely dehydrated, noticeably emaciated, and nearly unable to speak. His wrists and ankles show multiple layers of old and new bruises, clear signs of prolonged restraint. The man tries to say something but only produces weak sounds. However, while paramedics examine his body, an officer notices a plastic ID lanyard still hanging under the man's collar. The badge is dirty and scratched, but the information is still legible. It bears the logo of a Las Vegas logistics company called Silver State Freight Logistics. Below the logo is a small photo ID and the name Ryan Mercer. For delivery drivers, this type of badge is typically worn throughout shifts to access warehouses and industrial areas. It appears Ryan was still wearing it when he was brought into the storage unit. Officers record the information on the badge and contact the company listed. Within minutes, the Silver State Freight Logistics office confirms that Ryan Mercer is indeed one of their drivers. Ryan is 35 years old, has worked at the company for over 7 years, and handles delivery routes in the Las Vegas and Henderson areas. Company information also clarifies another important detail. Ryan had been reported missing more than a week earlier. Ryan lives in North Las Vegas with his wife and 6-year-old daughter. Coworkers describe him as hardworking and reliable. Ryan rarely turns down extra shifts and often takes late-night deliveries that other drivers avoid. His job frequently requires driving at night and delivering to industrial areas on the city's outskirts. That was work Ryan had been accustomed to for many years. On May 8, 2025, Ryan began his shift at 1T Meaner at the Silver State Freight Logistics warehouse in Las Vegas. According to the company system, he completed most of his afternoon deliveries. Around 7:40 p.m., Ryan called the warehouse and said he had only 2 final deliveries left before returning. Nothing in that call indicated anything unusual. Afterward, his delivery truck continued moving southeast through the city. The last time Ryan was seen was at 8:11 p.m., when security cameras at a gas station on Boulder Highway captured him stopping to refuel. The footage shows Ryan stepping out of the truck, pumping gas, then entering the convenience store to buy a bottle of water. The gas station clerk later recalled that Ryan was inside for less than 2 minutes. He then returned to the truck and drove away. That was the last time Ryan Mercer was seen under normal circumstances. Around 8:30 p.m., Ryan's phone suddenly lost signal. The GPS system on the company truck also stopped transmitting data almost simultaneously. Initially, dispatch staff thought the device might be malfunctioning or that Ryan had entered an area with poor reception. But as time passed and Ryan did not return to the warehouse, concern began to grow. At home, Ryan's wife also started noticing something wrong. Ryan usually called when nearing the end of his shift, but that evening, his phone remained completely silent. She called him multiple times but received no answer. When the clock approached 10 p.m. and Ryan still had not come home, she contacted the company where he worked. The company confirmed that Ryan's truck had not returned to the warehouse and the GPS signal had been lost earlier. After several unsuccessful calls, Ryan's wife decided to report him missing. Around 11:30 p.m. on May 8, she went to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department to file a missing person report on Ryan Mercer. An official missing person report was created that night. When Ryan Mercer was taken to the hospital, Henderson Police Department officers began cordoning off the entire area around Unit B17. The storage row behind Iron Gate storage quickly became a crime scene. Yellow caution tape was strung across the concrete corridor, and forensic investigators from the city of Henderson were called in. When they entered the storage unit, the first thing that drew attention was not the water bottles or roll of duct tape on the floor, but the metal chair placed in the middle of the room. That chair was not simply placed there. Upon closer inspection, technicians discovered that the chair legs had been bolted directly into the concrete floor with 4 large steel bolts. This meant the chair could not be moved, and someone had deliberately turned it into a fixed point inside the room. On the chair's armrests, investigators found traces of industrial duct tape and numerous cut zip ties. Next to the chair was a pair of metal handcuffs, the type commonly sold in security supply stores. On the concrete floor beneath, they found multiple bloodstains, some long dried and darkened, but others more recent. Technicians began photographing every detail, marking each area on the floor with numbered evidence cards. In the corner of the wall opposite the door, an investigator discovered an additional tripod. It was set up upright, pointed directly at the metal chair. No camera was attached, but the tripod's position clearly indicated that someone had once placed a camera there and recorded what happened in the room. As the forensics team continued their examination, they collected samples from the floor, the restraints, and the chair armrests. Preliminary results later revealed a detail that shifted the investigation to a far more serious direction. The blood samples in the storage unit did not belong only to Ryan Mercer. Initial DNA analysis showed multiple different DNA profiles, at least from 2 or 3 other individuals. This meant Ryan may not have been the only person ever brought into that room. Investigators also noticed many signs indicating the victim had been held for a prolonged period. Empty water bottles were scattered across the floor, crumpled fast food bags in the corner, and scratch marks on the metal walls, suggesting someone had tried to claw at the surface from inside. While the forensics team continued working inside the storage unit, another group of investigators began reviewing the facility's security cameras. Iron Gate Storage has multiple cameras at the entrance, along the corridors, and in the front parking area. After reviewing footage from several days prior, they quickly identified a significant clip. In nighttime footage, a black Ford F-150 appears in the facility's parking lot. The truck stops near row B without headlights on and remains there for only a few minutes before leaving. The camera does not clearly capture the driver's face, but this truck appears multiple times in the days leading up to Ryan Mercer's discovery. Investigators flagged that footage and began tracing information about the black pickup truck. That was the first detail suggesting a specific suspect behind the metal room in Unit B17. While forensic technicians continued collecting evidence inside Unit B17, another team of investigators began tracing the rental records for this storage unit. According to the storage contract at Iron Gate Storage, the person listed as renting Unit B17 is a man using the name Andrew Collins. Records show the contract was signed about 6 months earlier, rent paid in cash, and identification provided was a California driver's license. However, when investigators checked that information in the California Department of Motor Vehicles database, they quickly discovered a major issue. The driver's license does not exist. The license number does not match any valid record, and the photo on the copied document does not correspond to any data in the identification system. In other words, the person who rented the storage unit had used a false identity. This immediately redirected the investigation. If Unit B17 had been rented with fake paperwork and inside it contained a room clearly used to confine and torture a victim, it was highly likely the person behind it had planned this in advance. Investigators returned to Iron Gate Storage's security camera system and began reviewing footage from several weeks prior. They focused particularly on the times the black Ford F-150 appeared in the parking lot. After hours of video review, they found multiple clips of the truck returning to the facility at night, often after 10 p.m. One clearer clip shows the driver stepping out and walking toward row B, where Unit B17 is located. The man's face is still obscured by darkness and the camera angle, but one striking detail immediately catches the attention of many investigators. The man's gait is abnormal. Each time his left foot steps down, he drags it slightly and leans a bit to the right, as if he has a prior injury to his left leg. That detail becomes a key identifying characteristic. investigators begin checking criminal records in Nevada and Arizona for suspects with prior convictions and a similar gait. It does not take long for a name to appear in the search results. Victor Hale, 48 years old. Victor Hale's record has appeared multiple times in law enforcement systems over more than 2 decades. His criminal history includes auto theft, identity document forgery, illegal possession of weapons, and fleeing from police in a pursuit years earlier. Additionally, an old Arizona police file describes Victor Hale as having a slight limp in his left leg, the result of a motorcycle accident many years ago. When investigators compare that information to the footage from Iron Gate storage cameras, the similarity becomes too clear to ignore. But the most alarming discovery is not in Victor Hale's criminal record. As they begin checking his address history and prior rental contracts, investigators find that Victor Hale had rented multiple storage units over the years. Records show he rented storage units in at least 3 different states: Nevada, Arizona, and California. Some units were rented for a few months then left empty. Others closed after the tenant disappeared from the contract. This pattern causes investigators to start asking a terrifying question. Is Unit B17 at Iron Gate Storage truly the only location where a victim was held? Or just one of many rooms Victor Hale used over the years? While investigators begin focusing attention on the name Victor Hale, Ryan Mercer's condition at the hospital gradually stabilizes. After nearly 2 days of IV fluids and continuous monitoring at Sunrise Hospital in Las Vegas, Ryan is finally able to speak clearly enough to answer investigators' questions. When 2 detectives from the Henderson Police Department enter his hospital room, Ryan is still very weak. His wrists are bandaged. His ankles still bear marks from the chain that once locked him to the wall. But his memory of what happened over the previous 9 days is frighteningly clear. Ryan recounts that on the evening of May 8th, after leaving the gas station on Boulder Highway, he continued driving to the next delivery point. However, when he stopped at a small parking lot behind an industrial warehouse area, everything changed in seconds. Ryan had just stepped out of the truck cab when a dark pickup truck slowly entered the lot and stopped a few meters away. At first, Ryan thought it was just another driver looking for directions in the warehouse area. But when the truck door opened, the man who stepped out said nothing. Ryan remembers the next detail very clearly. The man immediately drew a gun. No warning, no explanation. Just a gun pointed straight at his chest. Ryan says he barely had time to react. The man ordered him to turn around and raise his hands. When Ryan complied, he quickly used plastic zip ties to tightly bind Ryan's wrists behind his back. Ryan says he did it very fast, as if he had done it many times before. Ryan was then pushed into the passenger seat of the pickup truck. The man kept the gun trained on him the entire time. Ryan could not clearly see the man's face in the darkness of the parking lot, but he remembers one clear detail: the limping gait in the left leg as the man moved around the truck. Ryan was covered with a jacket over his head while the truck began driving. He says the drive lasted about 20 to 30 minutes, though in his panic state he could not be sure of the exact time. When the truck stopped, Ryan was pulled out and led a few steps before hearing the sound of a metal roll-up door opening. He was then pushed inside a dark room. When the jacket was pulled off his head, Ryan found himself in a storage unit. The man forced him to sit in the metal chair in the middle of the room. Ryan says the chair had been fixed to the floor, and within minutes of sitting down, his hands were tightly bound to the armrests with zip ties and industrial duct tape. His ankles were also chained to an iron hook on the wall. Ryan says that was the moment he began to understand he was not just being robbed, he had been kidnapped. Over the next 9 days, Ryan almost never knew exactly how time was passing. The storage unit had no windows. The only light came from a small bulb hanging on the ceiling, and sometimes from light seeping through the door crack when the man returned. Ryan says the kidnapper was not there continuously. He would often leave for hours, sometimes half a day, then return. Each time he returned, he brought water or a small amount of cheap food like bread or fast food. But Ryan says the amount of food was very little. Many times he received nothing to eat for more than a day. Ryan recounts that the man often beat him, mainly with fists to the stomach and shoulders. But what terrified Ryan most was not the beatings. It was the tripod placed in front of him. Ryan says that on some returns, the man would set up a camera on the tripod, pointed straight at the chair where Ryan was bound. Then he would begin recording video. Ryan does not know exactly why he did it. Sometimes he just stood behind the camera, watching. Sometimes he spoke incomprehensible sentences, as if talking to someone not present in the room. Ryan says the man never explained why Ryan had been brought there. No ransom demand, no specific threats, only complete control. Ryan remembers that by the 9th day, his body had almost no strength left. He says he began to think no one would ever find him. But that morning, while Ryan was lying on the floor too weak to sit upright in the chair, he heard a sound he had not heard in many days. The sound of metal cutting into a lock. Ryan says at first he thought he was imagining it. But seconds later, he heard the metal door begin to rise, and then he heard 2 voices from outside. That was the moment Ryan Mercer realized that after 9 days of captivity in the darkness of a storage unit, someone had finally opened that door. Ryan Mercer's statement provides investigators with crucial details they could previously only infer from camera footage and crime scene evidence. Particularly, his description of the kidnapper's limping gait and the left leg matches almost perfectly with the identifying characteristic of Victor Hale and his criminal record. Once this information is confirmed, the Henderson Police Department coordinates with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department to quickly issue an official warrant for Victor Hale, age 48. Footage from Iron Gate storage security cameras is extracted and further analyzed to better identify the black Ford F-150 that appeared multiple times in the parking lot during the period Ryan was held. Investigators then send information about this vehicle to multi-state vehicle tracking systems while checking traffic camera data on highways leaving the Las Vegas area. It does not take long before they detect a matching Ford F-150 passing a camera station on Interstate 11, heading southeast just hours after Ryan Mercer was found. This information is immediately forwarded to Arizona State Patrol as the route leads directly toward the state border area. Around mid-afternoon the following day, a traffic camera near Kingman, Arizona, captures an image of a black pickup truck with characteristics identical to the one in the storage facility video. Arizona Highway Patrol is notified immediately. A patrol unit spots the vehicle traveling on a road near the outskirts of Kingman and begins following from a safe distance. When they confirm the license plate matches the one reported in the warrant, local police units quickly coordinate to block the road. The Ford F-150 is stopped on a small road outside the city after 3 patrol cars form a barrier in front. Officers order the driver to step out of the vehicle. The man in the cab slowly complies, stepping down with both hands raised. As he walks a few steps on the road, one officer immediately recognizes the familiar detail from the camera footage. His left leg drags slightly with each step. The man is Victor Hale. He is subdued and handcuffed on the spot without gunfire or resistance. Inside the Ford F-150, officers later find several items familiar from what was discovered in the storage unit: zip ties, industrial duct tape, a handgun, and multiple water bottles. Victor Hale is placed in a patrol car and transferred to the Mojave County Jail, where he awaits extradition back to Nevada to face charges of kidnapping and holding Ryan Mercer. Victor Hale's arrest in Kingman quickly leads to his extradition back to Nevada to face criminal charges. Several months later, the case officially goes to trial in Clark County Court, Nevada. Prosecutors present to the jury the entire chain of evidence collected by investigators from the storage unit at Iron Gate Storage. Among it is DNA evidence found on the metal chair, restraints, and multiple bloodstains on the floor, directly matching Ryan Mercer and also linking Victor Hale to the scene. Additionally, forensic experts present security camera footage from the storage facility, showing multiple appearances of Victor Hale's black Ford F-150 in the parking lot during the time Ryan was held. But the strongest evidence comes from Ryan Mercer's own testimony. When standing before the court, Ryan describes in detail what happened during his 9 days of captivity, how the man approached him in the parking lot, how he used a gun to control him, bound him with zip ties, and brought him into the storage unit where the metal chair bolted to the floor became the tool for controlling and torturing the victim. Ryan also recounts the times Victor Hale returned to the room, beat him, starved him, and set up the camera on the tripod to record what occurred in that room. Throughout the trial, Victor Hale is almost unable to offer any explanation for the evidence presented. After several days of trial, the jury returns a verdict. Victor Hale is found guilty of kidnapping, torture, and unlawful imprisonment. The judge then pronounces the final sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. But even with the sentence handed down, the investigation is not truly over. Investigators continue to review other storage units Victor Hale once rented in Nevada, Arizona, and California, rechecking missing persons reports in those areas. Because with the multiple different DNA profiles found in Unit B17, Police believe Ryan Mercer may not have been the only victim ever brought into that metal room, and possibly not the only one who survived. If you want to see more untold true case files, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next stories. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode.